What's happening, everybody? Carolina is playing for something more than wins this week. First, a disciplined and physical St. Bonaventure team that probably won't give them the looks they want. And then Michigan State, Big Ten muscle, veteran guard play, and a readiness to test college programs on a national stage. The signal has to shift from flashes of potential this week to evidence of power. Sean Moran is back. Sherrell McMillan is here. I'm Joey Powell. This is the Coast to Coast from Inside Carolina. What's happening, everybody? This is the Coast to Coast from IC Inside Carolina. If you have not joined Inside Carolina just yet, man, I'm looking at you with all of the side eyes right now, but you need to go ahead and make that happen. Inside Carolina, same top-notch coverage. We're still the best in the business. We're still your favorite podcast. But if you have not signed up since we moved over to On3, check it out. I mean, we're the same people. We just got a really, kick-ass new house. So come check it out. Come hang out. We want you to be a part of it. You get all the top-notch inside content. You get these shows and everything else. But I want to give a special shout-out to our sponsors, Johnny T-Shirt. Y'all know them. Y'all love them. They're with us as always. Sherrell McMillan there. Sean Moran is back. And not only is he back, he's better than ever, literally because the man has an addition to his family. Sean, we missed you last week. We missed you during the Maxi Adams commitment podcast. But let's just jump out first things first. Sean actually had a chance to see Max Adams play in person. So, Sean, I'm going to just tee this up for you first, man, and let you kind of give some deep dives. You kind of mix it up regularly, what you saw from him in person that maybe the film doesn't show, but just you talk, and we'll listen to you talk about Max Adams for a little bit.
Let me talk first. We need to make a decision if we're going to call him Maxi or Maximo or Max. Just pick one and move forward. Just FYI.
Max Headroom. We're going to call him Max Headroom. And he's going to be all pixelated. That's a deep cut for all the 80s babies out there. Let's just call him Max until somebody tells us otherwise. All right, Sean, you saw Max Adams to make Sherrell feel better. Tell us about Max Adams, please, Sean.
Well, yesterday at Poly Pavilion, the announcers were using Maxi, so I've got that in my head, despite Maximo in the report. So I'll go Maxi for that. But yeah,
that would have been helpful about 45 seconds ago, Sean.
All good.
Go ahead, man.
But yeah, I got to see him in person, which, coming from watching a lot of the AAU film, always good just to see the movement and how players are just running and athletically, etc. It wasn't a kind of a standout performance by him. 9 points in total, playing for Sierra Canyon, but it was their first game with Brandon McCoy, top 3 player who stole the show with some pretty electric dunks and 25 points. But for Maxi, first half only had 2 points. The team they're playing was in a 2-3 zone, so he was doing a lot of playing close to the basket in the dunker spot, but then flashing up to the free throw line. I thought very unselfish, despite being a top 25 player recently committing to Carolina. He wasn't trying to force shots, but he did have several, I thought, pretty good passes, both that turned into assists as well as open shots for teammates. So I think he was just fitting in the first half. His 2 points came off a dunk, and he was short on a few threes, but had some assists, had some rebounds, had some blocks, so was able to fill the stat sheet in other ways. Second half was a little slow in the third quarter, just continuing to miss some outside shots, short on a few of them before I think it's starting to get his rhythm a little more in and out. And then he went on a little mini 7-0 run in the fourth quarter with a dunk off of a cut, 3-pointer, and then a layup before finishing off with a miss fadeaway. So 9 points in total, some blocks defensively, both on ball and off ball. I think from a shooting perspective, that's been his strength. The form to me still looks really good, still has range. The follow through didn't seem as strong just yesterday in the game as we'd seen in AAU. But I think that'll come only 2 games into the high school season. So I expect him to start hitting 2, 3, 4 3-pointers a game. Athletically, I think, as we've talked about, not a Caleb Wilson type athlete. So it is something that I could see almost a Derek Dixon plus in terms of what he could bring next year and potentially into years 2 or 3, depending on how things go. So between Dixon and Adams, it could be 2 high 4-star recruits that can potentially build the foundation or lay a foundation for the future. But I did like in terms of the body language, his unselfishness, how he fit in, especially with a team that has a lot of talent. And once again, I think his shooting will get going, but he's not going to be the alpha on this high school team for the most part. But I think it'll help him fit into the general, whoever's on the team next year from 3-point shooting and filling the stat sheet in other ways. And I say all this, probably wasn't the normal viewing experience trying to watch with a 3-year-old. So I might have missed a few things, but for the most part was able to see him in person, which is what I wanted to do.
Man, give your 3-year-old a clipboard. He's got to start earning his keep around here at some point. Hey, Sean, we didn't have you available for the commitment pod when Adams committed to North Carolina, but if you could tell me something that Tar Heel fans should instantly be excited about and narrow it down to like 1 or 2 words, what is it?
Shooting is the main thing, but I think the ability to move, so he's best in catch and shoot, but I think his ability to move with his footwork and find areas to get open, and when he does get open, being ready to shoot in those areas. So shooting is the main thing, but as we talked about yesterday, he does a few other things. So he's a lot more than just a catch and shoot guy that you can take out of the game with a quick defender.
And Sherrell, just to reiterate, he did sign. North Carolina released a statement, confirming his signature and official welcome to the program. How do you feel like this stands with regard to North Carolina's willingness, or I guess obligation, to build going into next season? I know there's still a lot of things up in the air, Sherrell, but how do you feel like he positions them as a one-person class at this moment? I feel like a lot of folks felt like he was a good piece to build around, but I want to ask you, what do you feel like he brings as a one-man class as of this point?
I think Sean said most of it. He brings a ton of intensity, and he's played with a lot of good players. So I think there's a lot of times where you wonder how someone who's a star on their team, how they'll fit. And I don't know, really, he's never quite been the biggest name on any of his teams, but he always has found a way to contribute and to have a role. So I think that's good as he heads into college. So you can kind of count on him being able to blend and being able to fit in. That's number 1. 2, you don't want to rely on freshman shooters, but he's a really good shooter. So anytime you can add more shooting on the court is a good thing. And then 3, we know North Carolina probably needs more on the wing / at the 4 spot. And that's where he will reside, is, at the 3 and probably sometimes as a small ball 4. So they took care of a few needs between the positions and the shooting, but also I think you see a continued yearning for intensity and people who are willing to kind of conform into the system and then find their way from there. And, he's shown that he's really good at that. So those 3 things I think are what are good building blocks for a team, no matter who's around it.
You remember a kid that you followed since you've been on this recruiting beat for the last 2 decades? Can you remember any kids that have been like that in the recent past that weren't necessarily the alpha on their team, but absolutely had that sort of skill set? And, if you stuck them on any other decent high school team, they would be the guy?
Well, our colleague Justin Jackson was the guy on his high school team, but on his AAU team, there was kind of a similar thing. He was on a team with Kadeem Lattin, who went to Oklahoma, Justice Winslow, and there's a guard I can't remember who was really good. That's going to bother me.
Darren Fox and Kyle or Oubre.
Oubre. It was Oubre, Fox,
a younger Fox.
Winslow, and Kadeem Lattin, and they didn't win Peach Jam. But yeah, Justin was really good at that. He could kind of find his way really on any team, and there was no worries when he got to UNC about, how is he going to fit in with some of the other upperclassmen and freshmen. So again, a wing who played smart and played intense and had a reputation as a shooter. So maybe that's kind of a thing too.
So appreciate that wrap up, y'all. Not a lot else to report. I think Sherrell had a really good discussion with Joe Tipton this past week discussing a couple of guys that are still out there uncommitted. One specifically, Dylan Mingo. Not a lot to report there. If you'd like to find out more about that, go to the website and see that information. But let's talk about quickly. Last week, UNC only played one game. Sherrell, did you have any sort of real lingering heartburn after the way they let Navy get kind of back into that game with the last 4 or 5 minutes? Do you feel like it's just one of those, depending on the opponent, a very veteran Navy team? Do you still have any lingering concerns about the way that game unfolded?
I have not. I've not thought about that game a single moment since it ended, pretty much, because they were going to have a week off. And I think Rob's column, well, I disagreed with some of the things. I think he made a point that, you play 3 teams like that 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 you're more talented than, as Roy Williams would say. It's easy to get a little lackadaisical. I think let me rephrase, against those teams, there were not concerns. It was just they let down the effort. But I think moving forward, if they continue to do what they did in the Navy game, then yeah, it'll be a problem. But specific for the Navy game, I don't think it was a huge issue. It was just one of those things that happens.
Yeah, I don't like the way the sloppiness just kind of popped out of nowhere at the end of the game. But I would remind everybody, regardless of the record, Navy returned just about everybody and is rated very highly, or at least thought of very highly.
And let me jump in. Let me jump in too,
Yeah.
Joe. Let me jump in too. There's a couple people we talk to who we think I talk to, I think, and know basketball a lot more than I do. I know they do at the college and NBA level. And they texted and they were like, Carolina's out of conference schedule is going to look a lot tougher in March than it did in November. And, at first I was like, oh, you're giving them an excuse. But they're like, yes, Radford has lost some games and Navy's going to lose some games and St. Bonaventure is going to lose some games. But that person said all 3 of those teams are really well coached and they kind of know their identity and know what they want to do. So this person was like, count on it. It's going to be, those wins are going to be better in March than they were in November. So just one person's opinion.
And personally, I feel like that late game wake up might have been exactly what that team needed going into a week off and then heading on the road to Fort Myers. So let's talk about this upcoming Fort Myers tip-off. Look, I have absolutely ripped this tournament the last couple of shows, made fun of its lack of venerable reputation, the fact that it's called the Skechers Fort Myers tip-off, because let me tell you what, when I think about basketball shoes, I think about Skechers. Regardless, North Carolina is one of the 8 teams in here. Really quickly, without looking, Sean, Sherrell, name one of the other 8 teams that aren't the 2 North Carolina are playing, or the rest of the 8 teams, not the other 8 that aren't 2 of the ones that North Carolina is playing. Just shout it out.
I can only name one, ECU.
Yeah. Okay.
But, yeah.
They've also named it the Palms Division and the Beach Division, which please stop. Just
to be fair, there have been some good games in this tournament in the past.
Okay. That and $5
and
buys you a small
Suncoast Credit
Starbucks.
Union Arena, pretty nice place to watch a game.
What are you on the payroll? Stop. Let it go. So moving on to this tournament, I think the biggest thing for North Carolina is, one, they're getting away from home. And I think this coming week is going to be a chance where they can not only solidify themselves against some better competition, but it's going to be another litmus test of, okay, is this team for real? So let's start first things first, going on the road, playing in one of these MTEs. Looking at St. Bonaventure, I want to give everybody kind of a quick synopsis of their schedule. They haven't really played anybody. They've beaten Bradley, Canisius, Siena, Youngstown State, and Robert Morris, right? So not exactly a gauntlet of squads there. They were decently close with Bradley, edged out Youngstown State by 4 last weekend. And everything else, they're kind of all over the place, but they are 5-0. They will present some physicality, some discipline. They got some big bodies. Just looking at them on tape, you see Simmons, Mitchell, and Charles are the 3 biggest people I see. Sherrell, help folks understand why the physicality of St. Bonaventure might present some problems for North Carolina.
Well, it's something I think has been raised pretty much all offseason. First off, I'm not going to pretend like I know anything about St. Bonaventure outside of reading their KenPom profile. Like, I'm just going to be completely honest. I can see
I did some
that they
digging
have
just for the show today. I'm not
yeah,
like the the official Woj fan club guy. Not that either.
right. So you see they've got a couple of big guys, one big guy in particular. You see that, they play kind of a physical style based upon their profile. And I think all offseason, we were like, well, yes, Carolina has like height. Vesar is 7'1", Vesar is 7'1", Caleb 6'10", Stevenson 6'10". They have a lot of height, but do they have a lot of size? And how will they handle physicality and being tough? And when they get pushed around, how will they respond? And I think that's the big question for me coming into the St. Bonaventure game, is that we haven't seen someone who even Kansas, I don't know if they were physically close to Carolina. Like, they had Badunga, like he was okay, but Tiller is not like a plus athlete or anything, and he doesn't have a ton of size. He doesn't play really physical, so there hasn't been a challenge yet for Vesar, I would say, outside of the BYU exhibition, in which they actually did pretty well. But again, it was an exhibition, so I think that's why, looking at this game, I want to see how they respond, how they handle it, because they're going to be scouted pretty well. The teams have had time to kind of see what they do. So what happens when Carolina, when Vesar gets taken away, or Caleb Wilson gets taken away, or Kyan Evans gets taken away? How do they respond? What do they go to? What's their counter? That's the thing I want to see in this particular game. And also just better first half play, because it seems like that's been an issue. And I didn't think it would be with Caleb on the roster, but maybe that's too much to put on one person. But yeah, I want to see how they come out in the first half as well.
Sean, I'm thinking about both of these games, and we'll get a little bit more into Michigan State in a second. But is this the game where North Carolina's lack of a true backup five actually shows up? And if so, is it going to be Hubert Davis having to get creative with some lineups to mask his lack of trust for Zayden High and James Brown?
Certainly against Michigan State, that could potentially come into action. I think saying Bonaventure, to your point, more the strength and physicality than the size. So I think, between the 7'1" and long wingspan, it should, not going to say it's not going to be an issue, but feel comfortable that they'll be able to equip themselves pretty quickly. For St. Bonaventure, and to their credit, they put together a pretty solid team in a lot of different ways, going Frank Mitchell, bench warmer at Minnesota last year, and now playing really well. And then they brought in, Gardner Webb, D2, JUCO, et cetera, guys that are playing well together. But right now you look at KenPom, you see 11, 12 points. If UNC is, St. Bonaventure is not Dayton in my mind from last year. Granted, we weren't talking about Dayton like we should have been going into that game, but they're not at that level in the conference. I think they'll be a solid team, but it's not a team that, if UNC is coming down to the wire, getting down, then I think that could signal larger issues. But to your point against Michigan State, which I know we'll get into with their big guys and more of the skill level on big guys, that could be something. But also, they're not the type of bigs that should be drawing Henry and others Henry in particular into foul trouble, I would say.
The first thing you have to think about when you're wanting to stop St. Bonaventure is Daryl Simmons. He's averaging about 18 points a game. He plays a lot, but he's clearly kind of the idiom that I've heard all season about any point guard in any game that I've watched is the straw that stirs the drink. And so everybody, like every single announcer that I've heard in every game this year, I feel like says that. So that's what we're going to say here. Sherrell, help us understand how Carolina's perimeter defense and their discipline in playing good perimeter defense, how will that, I guess, help pace them and keep a guy, like Simmons from getting into a groove? Because he could hurt you if you let him.
This is one of those games, and I don't mean any disrespect to St. Bonaventure, but it is very much a Carolina controls what Carolina controls and they'll be fine type game. It's when, to your point, Joey, you start doing things out of character. You start doing things, maybe Evans or whoever has the assignment on him takes it personally and tries to do too much. That's when it becomes an issue. Because again, you've got Vesar and Caleb Wilson back there. So there's not a ton that's going to be able to happen when you've got those two huge guys, both athletic, are able to kind of shut down the lane. So then it's just a matter of Evans and Dixon and probably Powell and Bogovac as well, of just staying, firm, playing good, solid, fundamental defense. They don't have to do anything extra. They don't have to try to be Seth Trimble. Just play solid and do what's in the scouting report, and I think they'll be fine. And again, that's nothing against St. Bonaventure, but to your point, Joe, you were talking about who they played, and I get the fear, I guess, from people who cover or follow or root for UNC because of the way the Navy game ended. But St. Bonaventure is taking a major step up in class as well. So let's not forget that Carolina is a very talented athletic team, and it's going to be unlike anything St. Bonaventure has seen this season.
Yeah, for those who are watching us live on YouTube right now, yeah, it is going to be on FS1 Tuesday night starting at 6 p.m. And then the third game, or I'm sorry, the fourth day of games, North Carolina's second game will be at 4:30 on Fox on Thanksgiving Day proper. That's Thursday the 27th against Michigan State.
Which one should I watch, Joey? Which one should I watch, Joey? There's two games of note at 4:30 on Thursday.
No, there's not. There's North Carolina and there's Michigan State. This other one that you're discussing is not of note. You might make it of note, but it is not of note, not for the purposes of this Coast to Coast podcast.
And Joey, one quick thing, maybe on the flip side of what you were saying, they have big guys, but who's going to guard Caleb Wilson on their team in terms of?
So that's kind of where I wanted to go with this. Is we talked about the fact that Frank Mitchell's should eat in the Atlantic 10, right? But he was a kind of a bit guy at Minnesota, and they have to guard, as we've said before, Caleb Wilson, and there's not a lot of teams in the country that trot out Caleb Wilson. Sean, is this a good game where North Carolina could try to be not just a finesse and athletic big team, and actually try to use this as a good physicality segue as they go into Michigan State on Thursday? Because that to me seems like the biggest, if you're looking at it from two games as a unit instead of first game and second game. But I've been wrong before. Just ask my wife.
Well, I think one of the common links between both teams is their ability to rebound, the offensive rebounding. And we know UNC on the defensive end has struggled with that at times. So I think it almost is a good warm-up or test match for UNC going against one of the top teams in St. Bonaventure in terms of offensive rebounding, that they're going to use that size, physicality, maybe not speed, but to try to body you, wear you down, to then go into Michigan State where they're playing two physical bigs as well. And you can go through their games to see their offensive rebounding ability to create second chance points. So I think in terms of style of play, St. Bonaventure does not play fast. They do not shoot the three that well. They make teams work defensively. So I do think it is a very good warm-up test case for UNC going into the bigger matchup of Michigan State.
And again, I think there are things to be learned from each game at this point. This North Carolina team is still a work in progress. They're even more of a work in progress without Seth Trimble. We've discussed that before, but let's look into the big matchup. I think this is the one that's the marquee. This is the actual game that's happening on Thanksgiving Day, independent of what my friend from Timberlake might say. We're going to dig into Michigan State, and these dudes they're strong, they're big. It's everything you typically want to see from Michigan State. Tough as woodpecker lips, whatever. I'll go ahead and give you the names. You guys saw them beat the brakes off of Kentucky the other night, which was, that'll get you ready. But looking at the players that are going to be the ones you need to know. We've talked about Jeremy Fears here on this show before. Just an amazing assist man, really, really good guard. Cohen Carr and Jackson Kohler. So Kohler's obviously the big man. He's the one that's going to get all the attention. But for me, Fears is going to be the dynamic to do or to stop for North Carolina. Sherrell, who's top of your scouting report if you're North Carolina looking at this Michigan State team?
I'll probably go Fears. I want to go Kohler just because I think he can potentially present some problems for Caleb Wilson just because of his inside out ability. He's got some of that old man strength, grown man savvy, all those things you associate with older players. But I'll go Fears. Just he's averaging 10 assists a game, which is pretty incredible considering Michigan State outside of Kentucky game can't shoot from three. Like they are not a good shooting team. The reason they beat Kentucky is because they made 11 threes. They were 11 of 22 for 50%. I don't know they've been above 30% in any of their other games. So the fact that he still is averaging 10 assists a game is pretty incredible. The team on the year, they have 138 made field goals and 104 assists. So that's 75% of their field goals are assisted, which is number one in the country. So they move the ball, and I think Fears is the big catalyst for that. And I do think if you, again, we're going to probably say this a few times over the next few weeks, but if you have Seth Trimble, that's obviously, who you would put Seth Trimble on and try to, cut off their offense from the leader. But it's going to be up to Kai and Evans to do it because I think if Fears struggles, then it's hard for them because they don't really have a ton of guys who you would give the ball to and say, go get a bucket. They're not honestly that dissimilar from Carolina in that respect. And they have guys who can do it occasionally or, maybe half the time, but not someone who can get to the rim every single possession. So yeah, I would go with Fears to cut him off and see what happens from there.
Yeah, I know you're a big fan of Jeremy Fears too, Sean. I'm just thinking, MSU is really, really good in ball screens. They're physical and they do a great job of getting downhill. And they're okay in transition. And like Sherrell said, when you've got a guy that's averaging almost 10 assists a game, what's North Carolina's counter to that? Like, what is North Carolina? I think Sherrell laid out a couple of good things that might allow North Carolina from an overall standpoint to neutralize things. But when I see, a guy like that, and I see UNC not having Seth Trimble, is there a tactical thing they can do a little bit different? Is it how they go, under screens? Is it more of just stepping in passing lanes? You tell me what the way to neutralize what they want to do on offense is.
Well, I don't think you're going to fully neutralize it, but they have a lot of different pieces. So I think you've seen game by game, it's functioned a little differently. To Sherrell's point, 11 threes against Kentucky. Outside of that, haven't shot over 30%, but you've seen different players make those threes, and you've seen different. I think they have 4 guys averaging over 10 points with the 2 bigs, Fears and Carr. To me, I guess you almost have to look at things differently or individually. So Kohler, if you can just contest him, last year, I know he didn't play that well, but the Michigan State bigs just feasted on the lack of UNC bigs last season. That's not going to be the case this year. So to me, it's more just making them uncomfortable. Fears isn't going to continuously break you down and get to the basket, but the more that you're just making shots uncomfortable for Kohler, from his 15 feet. Carr, he's an elevator when he jumps off of 2 feet. So making sure you're keeping him off the glass or from dump offs, and from a shooting perspective, you've seen their 2 guards have come in and they have the ability to hit 2 or 3 threes. So making sure that you're chasing them around screens because they're going to devise up plays to get them open, going from left to right to left, and then coming off the bench, they have 2 freshmen, both from the DC area. So guys that I've followed maybe a little more closely than a lot of other 4-star recruits. But Cam Ward from Maryland, he's a junkyard dog, and he's been playing
great
well off the bench. So
great quarterback, even better goaltender.
So I think what they have off the bench can be a difference maker, and it's just trying to make sure that nobody goes off for them, but that you're just making them work hard. And then if you can keep them off the glass, then that's going to make things tough offensively. They're going to thrive defensively. So they have 2 great wins, Arkansas, Kentucky. Kentucky offensively, they played their best game, but they're going to bring it defensively. Last year against UNC, they pretty much dominated the majority of the game without their best player at that time. But to me, also, UNC has played Michigan State so many times over the years. To me, they're the barometer of what type of team is UNC. Is UNC going to blow them out like we saw continuously at the beginning of the Roy Williams era? Then they're probably an elite team. If they're going to play to that level or lose to Michigan State, then they're probably a first-round exit potential NIT team. So Michigan State's always been the barometer just with how steady they are, but I would say just make them uncomfortable based on their strengths and weaknesses.
I don't know if you're sleep deprived or if you're just ready to put the hammer on this North Carolina team and bury their season. But one of the things that I saw in the Kentucky game, Michigan State did not let Kentucky get into any of their stuff, especially in the first half. And I think that shook Mark Pope's team a little bit. Help us understand why that is something that even early in the season, Tom Izzo's teams are so efficient at. And is that something North Carolina can just physically work through?
Well, I would say this team versus last year's team, it'll we go back to what they did in that second half of Kansas of the ball movement, and we did see at pieces in the Navy game, right? So if UNC is playing not a perfect game, but if they're playing up to what we've wanted them just from that offensive crispness, that 0.5 philosophy, then they should be able to dictate a little bit better versus if it was an ISO team or reliant on just a high ball screen and a two-man game and everybody else is standing still. So I do think UNC's movement can make it more challenging for Michigan State. But yeah, I mean, Izzo and their coaching staff, they have they have a team, you know what you're going to get out of Michigan State, and it doesn't take them 2 months to get into gear. You know what type of program you're going to get. This is a team also that a lot of returning players as well. So they have that continuity while adding just a few pieces in. So, just naturally they're a step above from returning players. Then you add the Izzo physical mindset, and that's what you're going to get, early on. Usually, although you're seeing them lose to Kentucky or lose to a Kansas or lose to a Duke in the Champions Classic. So to me, both the Arkansas and Kentucky games were pretty eye-opening to me, thinking that, out of those 4 tough games, Michigan State is one that UNC should have. And it's probably not the case right now, but just going back to the ball movement and crispness, if they can play together, then they should be able to dictate and be the aggressors.
Sherrell, you mentioned earlier, and this is where I wanted to revisit it. You talked about North Carolina playing with intensity early on. I think because of Michigan State's just lack of consistent outside shooting, if North Carolina were to actually come out and set the tone early on, I feel like that would be a good script for them to follow to actually get a win against Sparty. What are we most likely to see from North Carolina if they're able to get that intensity? What does that look like early in a game for them from just from an on the court standpoint, if they've got the right intensity level?
I think it's just competing, and intensity doesn't have to come out as convulsing and slobbering all over the court and yelling. That's not necessarily the definition of intensity I'm looking at. Intensity is almost equal to focus. So I want to see like proper rotations and good ball movement and passing down a good shot for a great shot. Those are the things that happen when you're truly locked in and you're truly intense on the offensive end. And on the defensive end, it's kind of the same thing. Know where, know when to help, not when to help, like know the defensive call, like understand your assignment. That kind of stuff to me is a sign of intensity because it means that you're really focused and locked in. The yelling and all that stuff is great. And it's a part of intensity, but it's not the only part of it. So I'll be looking for that. And then just little stuff like, Michigan State is a notorious man-to-man defense team. They do what they do, and they're not going to do anything else because that's what they do. So if they do, say Caleb Wilson gets the ball in the elbow, if they do flash at him, I want to see him make the proper read, the right decision to, whatever it may be, whether it's, Evans in the corner or a lob to Vessar, whatever it is. That's the kind of stuff that I'm personally looking for from an intensity standpoint, because they all said they were upset after the Navy game. They had a team meeting, and in the years that we've been doing this, that I've been doing this, I have never heard of a Carolina team having a team only meeting after a win. Now it could have happened and we didn't know about it, but most of the time that kind of stuff leaks out. So they played the part of, we're upset that we didn't play to the standard. Now they get a chance to go and show and improve.
So two things on what you're saying, Sherrell. One, in terms of the team meeting, I think Joey asked a question earlier. Are there any concerns on those games? I think to me, concern from a body language perspective, I think we've seen it time and time again on fast breaks over the years, the lack of passing, and just, hey, I get the ball. There's guys running on either side of me, but I'm just taking it to the basket. To me, that was frustrating to watch, especially knowing this team needs to be the ones passing a little more than past teams. And I think I saw some body language between Caleb and Luca at times that was a little concerning. So that's just going to be something I'm paying attention to, and hopefully was addressed, during that game. And then I think, from a Caleb body language perspective, he seems so focused in that Navy game that hopefully he can use that to kind of bring his teammates up to that level instead of just dialing in so individually, and not saying selfishly, but just trying to take some of that passion and spread it out to his teammates. I think can be helpful. And then, the other point, this is going to be, Kansas was the first game, so nobody knew what to expect. But you have Izzo, and then you have Doug Wojcik as the assistant coach, who knows UNC, is very rigorous. And so this is going to be the most prepared team that UNC faces. And they're going to give UNC a lot of challenges. I can just imagine Carr matching up with Wilson, just trying to be physical with him, because he does have that. He's shorter, but probably has that athleticism. They saw Kyan Evans take 8 threes. Can they be physical with him and force him to shoot? So they're going to try exactly what they want to do to make UNC do what they want to. And it's going to be up to UNC to, once again, move the ball, work to get open shots, high, low, make 3 passes, etc. So that chess match, especially early in those first 10 minutes, will be interesting, because going back to Maui, I mean, defensively, Michigan State had UNC just running everywhere from some of the screens and going left to right. So that's going to, just to me, how is UNC able to hang with Michigan just from that more tactical perspective?
And with Carr too, last thing with Carr, last year, the Carolina game was his best power forward non-conference game. So he's probably going to be pretty confident, knowing that he had a good game against UNC last year.
Yeah, and I'd rather play checkers on a leopard's ass than play Tom Izzo's style of basketball this early in the season. So I think it's important that North Carolina not be led into their style of play. I love that you guys couched how typical and reliable the style that Michigan State brings is. What you're going to get. It's almost as reliable as Johnny T-shirt, in a sense that you're going to get amazing customer service, top-notch selection, regardless of how early or late in the season it's going to be. They're going to have the best stuff for you. They're going to have the best prices for you. They're going to have the best customer service and the best shipping times. And any of these things are what's going to make your season great. It's almost the holidays. I got literally Thanksgiving is this week, and I've been so inundated with Christmas stuff. I mean, you'd think I had mistletoe hanging from my rear end. It's stupid how quickly the war on Thanksgiving has taken over, and Christmas has subsumed November. But I say all that if you're going to do the Black Friday thing, which we won't have another show until after Black Friday, use Johnny T-shirt. Make sure you get the premium code off the message boards. Get your extra 10% off the top of their amazing prices. Use Johnny T-shirt. We know that you'll appreciate them. We want you to appreciate them as much as we appreciate their sponsorship. We'll be right back. If you're watching us, nothing changes for you. But if you're listening to us, there'll be some national ads that jump in here. You're listening to Inside Carolina's Coast to Coast podcast. All right, fellas, we've broken down a lot of what to expect with this, 2-game MTE situation before North Carolina comes back home for a break and then plays next week against Kentucky in the ACC SEC Challenge. I want to ask you guys quickly, doing a little stock watch here. Who is the player that has to step up and elevate their game this week? I don't think you can ask Caleb Wilson to do more than what he did in that little stretch against Navy, because that absolutely changed the outcome of that game. But who's somebody that needs to do more than what they've done thus far for North Carolina to be successful in Fort Myers? Sean.
I was hoping you were going to go to Sherrell with that one first, because I think you can go a variety of ways. I'm going to go. I'll let Sherrell talk about the guards. I'm going to go with Henry, who played extremely well, has been consistent, but right now you look at UNC on KenPom, they're 36th offensively. And I think coming into the season, you said, hey, this has a makings of if things are clicking, top 20 at worst offensive team, potentially better to get all those pieces. So I'm going to go with Henry just in terms of that offensive focus. I know he's been shooting the ball well, stretching the floor, but just having him locked in from probably maybe outside of Caleb, the highest paid transfer and the guy that was really that linchpin in terms of their portal focus, should be playing like the all ACC player I think he can be. So once again, you can probably go a lot with the guards or Stevenson, but I want your best player, second best player playing at that level, especially against teams that have bigs and will be looking that are a little more physical as well.
All right, Sherrell, same question. Sean just either gave you an easy out or made things difficult for you. You're up.
No, he gave me an easy out. I think the obvious answer is Kyle Evans, right? I think we all agree. He's played well as a facilitator. His assist rate is 30%. His turnover rate is 23, but it's come down. It was up around 25 a few games ago. And I think he's doing a really good job of finding Vesar, of finding Wilson, of keeping the ball moving. But I think I've said it at least 10 times now. Like, what he does better than anyone else, above all else, is shoot. And he showed it at Colorado State. He showed it in the tournament in that huge game against Memphis. He'd even showed it before really the Navy game. I mean, coming into the Navy game, he was 7 of 17, but he went 1 of 8 in that game, and it kind of tanked his percentages. This is what happens this early in the season. But it'll take a lot of pressure off of Vesar and Wilson, who I think we all agree are Carolina's 2 best players right now. It'll take a lot of pressure off of them if he's able to hit 2 or 3 in the game, because then say Tom Izzo changes his mind and decides, well, they can't really shoot as a team, and I'm going to shut down these 2 guys in the middle and make the guards beat me. I don't think we've seen that in a game just yet. The second half against Kansas, Trimble and Evans were really good, but we haven't seen a game in the entirety where the whole game plan was stop the 5, stop the 4, and see what the 1, 2, and 3 do. And I could see, like Sean said, with Wojcik being such a good coach and Izzo being such a good coach and their staff having some experience, they say these 3 guys, Stevenson, Powell, Bogovac, and Evans, those 4 guys, they can't beat us. We're going to make them beat us. And if that happens, you want one of them to step up. So I said Evans just because he's the starting point guard and they're expecting a lot of him, and he's been really solid. But it's really the 4 guards. Like, they're going to have to, the 3 guards in Stevenson, they're going to have to hit some open shots and not just do it in one half. Go, if they can go 5 of 12 or 4 of 14 from 3 over the course of a half or consecutively, and hit that 8 mark that Sean always talks about, 8 of 20, 8 of 21, something like that, then I think they'll have a good chance to win.
So I don't know who the player has to be. I don't think it matters. But North Carolina's got to get something from the backup 5. I said it earlier. I kind of teed it up a little bit, but since neither one of you guys jumped there, that's where I'm going to go. I mean, so far that position has essentially been more useless than a glass hammer, and they've got to get more out of it. They've got to get some sort of production, some sort of stability, some sort of flex that they can allow Vesar to breathe a little bit, and they don't have to rely on him getting 35 minutes a game. It's great if he does, but at some point during the season, if not now, they've got to see some sort of stability from those backup positions. And it was nice to see Zayden High get some baskets. It was nice to see James Brown be a little more under control. But both of those players right now are, to use Sherrell's old adage, I don't think they're in the circle of trust for Hubert Davis. And until they can earn that trust and start giving some more calm to this roster, I think that's going to be a real potential Achilles heel for the squad. Guys, we're going to take a couple of viewer questions tonight before we get out of here. I do think if North Carolina is able to win 2 games this weekend, I think it just further cements them as legitimate. Give me a prediction, Sean. What's the record after this coming week?
2-0.
Man, look at Mr. Positive over here. Man's got 2 kids, and now he's calling 2 wins. Sherrell, same thing.
If I'm not calling a win against Michigan State, then who am I?
I'm calling the game, Joey, so I cannot do a prediction. But I will say the key to no. You remember when they used to do that, Herb Street?
Thanks, Kurt. I appreciate you.
I used to laugh at that. I was like, dude, you've kind of told us who you think you're going to win. Just
Right.
say it. No, I think I really think 2-0 as well. Because I think the players only meetings can get really what's the word I'm looking for? They can be overhyped. It's like, oh, you called a players only meeting, cool, good job. But it really, I think, meant a lot that one, Seth Trimble, who was out, was one of the people who was heavily involved. Caleb Wilson, who was a freshman, you saw him, as Sean said, he just went into like takeover mode. Like, I'm not going to let this team lose this game. And as an aside, like, how refreshing is it that Carolina kind of has that guy and he's not 6 foot or 6'1" or 6'2"? Nothing against the guys who were that size, but it's been, I would say, some time since they've had someone who just went into like, okay, you guys aren't going to do it, so I'll do it. Hold my beer type deal. So that's refreshing. But I think
I love that you
all
just
that
dropped the hold my beer in the middle of a late basketball podcast on a Sunday night.
I was gonna say, hold my hat, but that's even older. But the whole point is, like, I feel like they're gonna come out fired up because I feel like they just didn't play to the level they expected themselves to. And that kind of accountability within a team, just haven't seen that in the last couple of years. Really, I guess last year we didn't see it. We saw it in the Cormac Ryan, Harrison Ingram year, but I don't think we saw it the year before in the Nance, the year after the national championship game run. So player-led teams just, to me, have a way of like kind of galvanizing themselves and really getting themselves up for these big games. So I expect them to come out against the Bonnies and against Michigan State and really play like they have something to prove. And that is a big part of Caleb Wilson and why he's so important to the team and to the program. Because I think in the past, too many times Carolina has had players who were like, I'm at Carolina, like this. I'm at Carolina. I'm the best. I'm supposed to be here. Whereas Wilson actually is like a really good player, a great player, but he doesn't play like it. He plays like he has something to prove. And as we've said over and over, that stuff is infectious and it spreads. And it's hard not to do it when you see someone like Caleb Wilson do it. So that is why a very long-winded 90-second explanation of why I think they're going to win both games is because they're going to come out, with a lot of intensity and a lot of focus.
All right, let's get a couple of questions before we get out of here. And shout out to everybody that's joined us tonight live. If you have not and you're listening to us via podcast, hey, we still appreciate you. All right. I don't care what Sherrell says. I still like you for listening to us on a podcast, even if you weren't with us live. First questions. I feel like this game in particular is now or never for High and Brown to at least win the spot, not like we have another option. That's from at Jacob Porter in the chat here. Sean, what does winning the job look like for you from a statistic standpoint? I don't even need you to tell me who that player is, but tell me what does statistically that team or what does North Carolina need to get out of that position for you to feel better about where they are?
To me, turnovers would be the main thing. I don't need them to score X amount of points. I guess maybe rebounds would be one thing, but I think you've seen from Brown, the illegal screens. You've seen from High, maybe a slower processor in terms of when to move the ball or trying to do too much. So to me, it's turnovers and then defense. And I think if you can just be reliable in an easy way, then that can create the opportunity to play more minutes. But if you're at a negative, which they have been, then it's just going to be a revolving door, and we're never going to see somebody enter that circle of trust, which could be a challenge all year. So very low standards, just minimize the turnovers and
just don't be bad. That's one of the things that Sherrell and I have talked about before. Just be net neutral.
It's chicken egg though, right? They can't really get into the circle of trust because when they do get a chance to play, they don't play well, which makes Hubert Davis not want to play them. So like, I guess the question is like, how can they earn that trust?
Put it a player I hated watching, Brian Zubek, right? Like he just set screens, rebounded the ball, and all of a sudden,
dude was a starter on a national championship team.
Well, that's where I was going. A very untalented championship team, but I'm not saying he has to be at that level, but that was his role, and he did it as well as anybody could. And I think you just have to accept a role and maximize that. And just by doing some very simple things, I think that can earn trust in a small manner.
Speaking of roles, another question from our live audience here. From Butch Green, will Jonathan Powell eventually push to the basket when they start running him out of the corner? Is that his game? I think it's his game, and he's been pretty automatic. But Sherrell, I want to ask you, what else can Jonathan Powell do for this team offensively, or does he need to just be that corner three guy?
You said rolls Thanksgiving week. My fat boy sense. I was like Hawaiian rolls. I want some. I'm so hungry right now. So whenever we get done, I'm gonna go eat. Yeah, I mean that's
little
his
melted
role.
butter on the top of them.
Oh man, so good. I got some smoked turkey ready to go as well. With Powell, man, you never want to say he is what he is, because we've done that with Jaron Stevenson, and that wasn't fair to him. And I need to apologize to him because he's shown more than what he was at Alabama. But so far, through his freshman year and now through a few games at UNC, Powell has shown that he's kind of a shooter who shoots, and that's pretty much all he does. That's his profile. I think he's capable of more. It's one, does he have a willingness to do that, considering how well he shoots from the corner, and then two, does Hubert Davis or will Hubert Davis continue to trust him to do that moving forward? So I do believe that he can do more, but I think right now what they need from him is to stand in the corner and make 60 to 70% of those corner threes. And if he can do that, he's definitely got a role on the team, because it's going to stretch the floor and it's going to help everybody. So right now, that's what they need him to be. But I think he believes, and I think Hubert Davis believes, and frankly, I believe that he can be more than that. But right now, that's what they need.
All right. At 4 UNC, just said a whole pod with no Luka discussion. I just want to see Luka be Luka. I was not crazy with the number of 1-on-3 runouts he had against Navy, but he's a volume shooter. You're going to see a lot of volume from him. Sean, what do you need to see from Bogovats in Fort Myers that makes you feel like he's evolving and then he's growing into what this team needs from him?
Well, he was going to be my answer when I went with Henry, just because I think offensively he does have that spark that can help a team against the Michigan State, especially if it's a grinded out game. Just with the quick release ability to get his shot off, both at the three or attack the basket. You look at his offensive rating over those games, which has been pretty strong each game he's played. Would love to see him have a really strong game from three. To Sherrell's point, between him, Kyan, Caleb, you can excuse him for what he was doing on the fast break, but I think just making sure you're moving the ball. But to me, if he can continue and I'd say maintain his level of play, but even going up, especially against Michigan State, to me, he would be that piece that when we're back here next week saying, hey, why did UNC go 2-0? If he's playing at a level we think he can get to, that would be a big reason.
All right, sorry guys, couldn't find my mute button there. All right, there's your typical Luka discussion. Sherrell wants to throw one more thing into the oven before we get out of here.
Well, we talked about Carolina having or potentially having really good shooters. The 3-pointers made in games this season, 8, 8, 10, 11, 11 in their 5 games. Even though they've hit 11 twice, I still don't feel like they've had that game where they're just hot and the ball's moving and they're just hitting their shots. And that time is going to come, whether it comes against St. Bonaventure or Michigan State, we'll see. But that combustible ability, I think, is really intriguing. And Bogovats could be one of those players who goes off in a game and hits 5 or 6 threes very easily if he gets hot. Same thing with Jonathan Powell. So that's why I keep saying I really think it's as much about the guards as it is about Vesar and Wilson, because at this point they're known commodities. Like you pretty much know what Carolina's going to get from them. It's going to be 15 and 8, something like that, 15 and 7, 16 and 7 from Vesar. And it's going to be 19, 20, 21 and 9, 10, 11 from Wilson. Can you get a game where you get that and Evans and Powell and Bogovats all hit a couple threes? If he can do that, then they're, from the offensive perspective, they're going to be hard to beat. So you're still waiting for that game to happen. I don't know when it's going to come, but it's going to happen. And that's when, they'll probably go off for like 100 points or something.
Yeah, I feel like Kyan Evans has one of those coming too. I knew he finally started shooting a lot in the Navy game, but I also think he's going to have one of these games where he decides whoever's guarding him can't guard him, and he's going to become a pretty quick bucket. But guys, I appreciate you. Glad y'all were able to join us. Sean, it's good to have you back, man. Congratulations on all of the literal growth in your family. Hope you guys are starting to get some sleep, and send the best to mom. Hope she's doing all right. Sherrell, man,
I figured you would love the new name, Joey. So
look, I
in
wasn't
honor
going
of
to
a
tell everybody that
great
you named your kid
podcast
after
host.
me, but your kid has an amazing future in front of him. Like I'm already thinking people are going to be lining up to just give him money and have him just be amazing, because there are great things in store for that young man. But appreciate everybody in the spirit of Thanksgiving. We're grateful for all of you who are a part of the show, who tune in regularly, who listen to us regularly, who download us regularly. We don't take that for granted. We see you. We appreciate you. Got to see a lot of folks out at the Bowls lot for the show. I guess yesterday now against Duke for football. And I'm just, it never ceases to amaze me when folks come up and say, hey, listen to the show. I just like chatting up with you guys. So we really appreciate that you guys consume this here podcast and our fans of Inside Carolina. We hope that you'll continue to do so. We hope we can continue to deliver what it is that you have expected from us. Anyway, we're going to get out of here. Thankful for y'all. Hope everybody has a great holiday. Make it great if you're not. And if you're traveling, please be safe. I hope that everything goes well for you and yours. We will talk to you very, very soon. Be sure to watch the post games. Tommy will have both of those ready to go after the St. Bonaventure and after the Michigan State games. So be on the lookout for those. And we will be back next Sunday for another regular episode of the Coast to Coast podcast. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt for sponsoring and to John Siegley for producing. I'm Joey Powell. We'll talk to you very, very soon. Make it a great day.